Interesting. Didn't expect to return to Mega Man so soon, but the announcement of the Battle Network Legacy Collection got me more excited than I probably should have. As someone who has been starving for Mega Man content the last 2 years, as well as consistently coping for something Mega Man related at those Capcom showcases during E3, seeing this announcement was a very special moment for me and the entire Mega Man community. Since that announcement, I've actually been motivated to play the games for myself for the first time ever, and not to sing their praises too much because eventually I'm going to cover it in that retrospective, but so far I'm in love. I'm about an hour into the first and second games respectively, and even within that period of time I could already see the appeals of this style of gameplay. It's surprisingly intuitive and definitely a lot more easier to get into than I initially thought. However, while playing these games, I remembered something. This gameplay style seems familiar. Like, I know for a fact I never touched the Battle Network series before this moment, but I know I played a game with these exact same mechanics. And after digging and doing a bunch of research, I managed to find it. But before I get into that, I have a question for you all. How many of you remember Ninjago? The 2011 LEGO TV show that aired on Cartoon Network was a show that I watched religiously back in the day. It was a really huge deal back then. I know nowadays it's seen as TMNT for babies, but personally I really like the world, the story, and the 5 main characters a lot. And I'm still glad that the series, even in recent times, is still going relatively strong, with a very successful movie tie-in and a whopping 16 seasons to its name. God damn. And naturally, with all this success, it's pretty much guaranteed that there are going to be at least some sort of video game adaptation to go along with it. Now, I've dabbled in a few Ninjago games in my time, one of them being this weird DS game simply called Battles Ninjago, which I still do own, by the way. But the most notable of which were the ones that could be found on Cartoon Network's website itself. Oh my god, dude, I haven't played some of these games in almost a decade, and sure, nowadays these games aren't anything all that special, but for being Flash games, they were not that bad. However, the Ninjago game that we'll be looking at today is this, Ninjago Spinjitsu Smash DX. Okay, so hold up. I'm sure most of you are a bit disoriented right now. Yash, you went from talking about Mega Man to Ninjago in like 2 seconds. What the hell are you doing, man? Well, see, there's actually a reason for that. You see this? Yeah, it's pretty shamelessly copying Battle Network. Again, this probably may not seem like a big deal now, or even at the time, but I don't think that many people realize that there weren't many Flash games that attempted to copy Battle Network. Back then, this was the only Flash game I'd ever played to even do anything like this. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this ahead of time, but this is going to be a very compare and contrasty type of video, as I'll be analyzing how well Spinjitsu Smash emulates the satisfying gameplay of the Battle Network series, meaning there is a whole bunch of comparisons coming your way. Ready? God, this joke sucks. Alright, so before I get into the game proper, I just want to outline the main appeals of the Battle Network series, just so we know what it takes to make a game in this style good. The battles take place on 18 tiles, 9 for you and 9 for your opponent. Battles are not turn-based, meaning that you can switch between the tiles at will, and more importantly, you'll always be able to attack enemies via your Mega Buster. This addition alone is enough to make Battle Network its own beast. Swapping between tiles while constantly being able to lay on the firepower has a certain flow and rhythm to it. A good number of the enemies you encounter, and especially the bosses, do a good job at truly testing how well you can balance the active shooting while maneuvering through their attacks. To add even more layers, we also have the chip system. Chips are temporary attacks you can use to deal bigger damage. Both games that I've played so far have had a lot of chips to choose from, and there's a big emphasis on creating a folder filled with chips that best fit your playstyle. It's because of all of these things why I find the combat in these games so engaging, probably the most engaging out of any RPG I've ever played. It seamlessly ties so many different elements together, from RPGs, from action games, from strategy games, and even fighting games in the sense of how you can use your chips to string certain attacks together. Again, I'm only covering the extremely basic gameplay fundamentals here. I know Battle Network 2 adds a lot to this formula, and Battle Network 3 and 6 damn near polished it to perfection, but regardless, it all feels so good and never gets repetitive. And as a non-RPG guy, I can greatly appreciate that. Anyways, how good of a job does this Flash game from 2011, made from the same studio that brought us Mad, do at emulating the core gameplay appeals of the Battle Network series? Well, for starters, you actually have a choice to pick between the 4 main characters. You got Kai, you got Cole, you got Zane, you got Jay. I picked Jay, he's my favorite. Now, obviously there aren't any hubs given the people who made this game, and the main way of progression is by going through a linear match after match arena, as you fight against these skeleton guys that I forgot the name of. While on the battlefield, the ninjas can use throwing knives as their main method of attacking. The battlefield itself still takes place on 18 grids, and it's still emphasized that you move around as much as you can. I mean, so far this is pretty standard stuff, until we get to the actual fighting. Okay, it seems to me like this game seems to focus more on the strategy piece of Battle Network than the action piece, which for the record is fine. Many of these battles require a lot more puzzle solving and quick thinking in order to win. And again, that in of itself is not the problem, but it's a mixture of things. For one, look at how big the health bars of these enemies are. The enemies in Battle Network had at max like 80 HP, and the enemies with HP in the hundreds are only usually relegated to boss encounters. But in this game, they're just regular enemies that take forever to kill, given that their knives only take off like 2 or 3 HP. What makes it worse is that because of the lack of hubs, you have to endure like 5 to 6 matches of fighting these things, each with a ridiculous amount of HP. These battles get so boring and so repetitive so quickly, and it's incredibly draining to play. Doesn't help that half the time, my knives go right through them. Like, what? But thankfully, that's where this game's version of the chip system, the card system, comes into play, right? Couple things. First, depending on which of the 4 you choose, you'll get a different pair of cards. Jay and Zane have access to both the lightning and ice cards, and Kai and Cole have access to both the fire and earth cards. Now, this I like because it emphasizes experimentation and guaranteeing that no matter who you pick, you'll always have a pair of cards that best suits your playstyle. However, a huge problem that the card system has is that almost all the cards look damn near identical. There is next to no visual variety in these cards, meaning that it's extremely difficult to find the right card to do the attack that you want. It also doesn't help that none of these cards reflect the attack that you use in battle. You think one card does one thing only to find out that it does something else that's utterly useless, and it's damn near impossible to distinguish the two because again, they look the same. In Battle Network, the chips had distinct illustrations that accurately reflected what they do, and better yet, the games even provide a description for you to read if the illustrations weren't enough for you. I really don't know how they decided that a system like this was good. But making it even worse is the fact that in order to even activate the cards, you have to press the numbered keys on your keyboard. And look, maybe it's just me, but having to look down at the cards to see which one is which while also paying attention to which key you have to press in order to activate it while also dodging the onslaught of attacks coming my way, I don't know, it just feels a bit clunky and gets me hit more times than I think I should've. I'm sorry, but this is flat out careless. Again, in Battle Network, if you want to use one of your chip weapons, you would press the shoulder buttons and then a menu screen will appear, which allows you to choose your chips and most importantly, pause the battle. That way, you won't have 78 million things flying at you while selecting your chip. Moreover, once you've selected a chip, you don't use it automatically. You equip it and can activate it at your leisure. You have no idea how many times I incorrectly launched an attack or missed an enemy by 1 tile because I didn't have this feature. God, things in this game just happen too damn fast. Everything always has to be so immediate and on the dime with no time to stop and actually plan things out. And for a game that emphasizes puzzle solving over and above action, that is objectively terrible game design. You know, perhaps I'm being a lot more harsher than I have any right to. I mean, just look at this game. It's a Flash game based on IP from a multi-million-dollar company. It'd be silly for me to expect anything more from it. But it just doesn't take away how mad and frustrated this game makes me. And that's a real shame because I remember enjoying this game a lot as a kid. I mean, it wasn't anything that blew me away or anything, but I remember having a decent enough time with it. But it may just be because I actually got to play the source material. It just seems so pathetic in comparison. I'm being very harsh on this game, but man, I don't really want to end this video on a sour note, because, I mean, there are aspects of this game that do work. I just want to preface this by saying I am no game designer at all, but here's what I would have done. Lessen enemy HP, lessen the number of matches to 2 to 3 to keep the game from being so repetitive, give the cards descriptions, which really should have been the least that they could have done, and give the cards illustrations based on the attacks that they do, so it's crystal clear on what they actually do in battle. These, I think, are pretty basic changes that wouldn't really take much effort to add. I mean, the game still probably wouldn't be on that same level as Battle Network if they were added, but even still, the game wouldn't be nearly as painfully boring or frustrating to actually play. There's a decent Flash game under all these issues, and even though the style of gameplay is only that, decent, the formula that I was attempting to emulate showed a ton of promise and was so fun to play at its core. The simplicity, the accessibility, all things that didn't seem that hard to properly replicate. Alas, leave it to Ninjago to illustrate just how difficult it can be to get this formula right.